Now, after Philip Schofield's sensational act scene from ITV, the broadcaster is on the hunt for his replacement both on This Morning and Dancing on Ice. And if woke ITV bosses have their way, Schof will be replaced on the figure skating contest by a woman, with the Sunday Mirror revealing that Jane McDonald is the front-runner to host the show with Holly Willoughby. But former Strictly Come Dancing star James Jordan has slammed the broadcaster, warning, "Stop trying to tick boxes all the time. I like to see men present as well. Otherwise, we're going to see no white heterosexual men on TV anymore." Well, I'm delighted to say we've got one of the few of them left on television. Kelvin MacKenzie.
Pleased to meet you, Dan. How's it going?
James Jordan is right, though, isn't he? There is actually an active move to get as many white, straight, old men off the box. Let's just be honest about it. It's happening.
Yes, and you're going to see more of it as well. It is a nightmare, and it's not only in show business. Anybody of a certain age, if you're in your 40s and you're white and male, the chances of getting another job are very, very small these days. So television is ahead of the curve on this, but there is virtually nothing that can be done about it. And that's why I imagine so many people are becoming trans. They're looking for job opportunities.
Isn't it also the case that when there is a controversial replacement, the bosses in particular think that a female will provide them with less drama? So I look to, for example, Piers Morgan leaving Good Morning...
Jeremy Kyle.
Jeremy Kyle. You know, there's been Bruce Forsyth when he left Strictly Come Dancing as well. He was replaced with a woman.
Yes, I think that they think that they're more manageable and more acceptable, and actually the other
less likely to maybe be scandalous.
I totally agree that there is no suggestion of any sexual interest in any direction, and I'm afraid that is that. We're done for. So if you're a male in show business right now, you'd be enormously concerned about what does your future actually look like. And I would say it looks pretty poor, to be frank.
Do you think Holly Willoughby, though, will work presenting alongside a woman like Jane McDonald? Because it certainly didn't work on the first day that she returned to screens after Philip Schofield's departure, where she was paired with Josie Gibson. It felt like a very odd combination.
Yes, I think if you have two strong women, in the same way as if you had Kyle and Piers next to each other, that wouldn't work either. Why they just don't go for the rather straightforward idea of a decent bloke and a decent woman, and I have no idea. But they definitely want to totally avoid anything going on of a rather difficult nature.
So you could see a situation where Jane McDonald maybe replaces Philip Schofield on Dancing on Ice, and maybe on This Morning it's Alison Hammond.
It could be anything, and it will happen right across all the news providers. You look at it in 20 years' time, there won't be a bloke to be found. Okay. And it's painful if you're an ambitious, creative man. I think you should keep slightly clear of show business, to be honest.
Now, look, Kelvin, the BBC, once again embroiled in an impartiality row. This time it's under fire after its political presenter, Laura Kuenssberg, gave leftie comedian Ben Elton a free platform on her flagship Sunday morning show to launch what was a scathing, I think actually slightly unhinged, attack on Rishi Sunak. Watch this.
It's depressed, it's sad. I mean, if anybody was still watching after that extraordinary Orwellian, meaningless, evasive word salad, I mean, everybody else wanted to believe, and I sort of believe maybe he's kind of a bit more decent, and it turns out he's as much of a mendacious, narcissistic sociopath as his previous boss.
I mean, Kelvin MacKenzie, this is extraordinary stuff. Remember, on the first episode of that show, they purposely hired the left-wing comedian Joe Lycett to humiliate the then Prime Minister Liz Truss. They secure an interview with Sunak. They then get another lefty to comedian in the form of Ben Elton to do just that. And there was no pushback, by the way. She didn't say, no, where's your proof that Sunak is a sociopath?
I totally agree. Right, so Ben Elton, of course, had a long history. Those of us who are as old as I am, right, remember he made an entire career in the 80s attacking Thatcher on Channel 4. Right, but where's he been this last 20-odd years? 2 decades. He lives in Fremantle, Australia. He has an Australian passport. What on earth was he doing on there? And he hadn't just thought about this. He knew who was going to come on. He knew what the line of response by Rishi was going to be. So he thought up words like sociopath, mendacious, and narcissistic, right? And everybody, oh, yes, that's quite right. Actually, had that been Boris, for instance, I think everybody would say, yeah, that's what we find him attractive. Rishi is the opposite end of that. No, that Ben Elton thing, the Kuenssberg show hasn't been doing well. It hasn't been making headlines. So, strangely enough, the BBC will be pleased with this. What I object to is nobody took them to task about it. And secondly, I'm forced to pay for this crap. I'm forced to pay for Ben Elton to go on there. I have to have this as part of my package. And if I don't have it, I'm off to jail. It is a ridiculous circumstance. And thank God, GB News adds some bloody balance to it all.
What's Kuenssberg thinking? Because she's completely undermining her credibility as a so-called impartial presenter.
Well, I'm not sure there's much impartiality with Kuenssberg. I mean, after all, I can remember when Brown was in charge, she was virtually an unpaid PR when she was the political editor of the BBC. No, you cannot get preferment at the BBC if you are centre or centre-right. It's over. So you might as well do the opposite. But after all, it wasn't her decision to put Ben Elton on there. It was the editor or some two-pop producer.
She could say no.
She could say no.
And she also could have provided balance, and she didn't.
No.
And she didn't seek balance.
No, she didn't.
After what was a quite frankly unhinged attack.
But he didn't,
based on nothing, by the way.
He did,
based on absolutely nothing.
No, he didn't.
I'm no fan of Sunak either, as you know.
He just look. He had planned all this in advance. He'd worked out the script. Right, it was almost like a headline. He knew what he was doing. And why doesn't he just bugger off back to Australia?
Yeah, that was 100% scripted.
It was.
I totally agree with you. It was a plan. Now, whether the BBC actually had insight into that plan, we don't know. But they must have had some idea of what he was going to do.
Well, that's what he was
after Joe Lycett.
Yeah, that's what he was doing on there. This wasn't a surprise. If he'd come at the end of it and said, you know, I quite like that guy, Rishi, compared to Boris or to Liv Truss, I'm in favour of him. Yeah. That would have been a great thumbs down.
And by the way, we know why this is extraordinary, because following my show, there's this great show called Headliners, which features some lefty comics, but also some brilliant right-wing comedians who exist in this country. Whether they'd define themselves as that, I don't know. But, you know, the likes of Nick Dinson and Leo Kearse and Andrew Doyle, and I can bet you those folk would never be invited on to Laura Kuenssberg. And if they ever were, there would be absolute outrage over it.
There would. Yeah.
And this, of course, follows that atrocity of Question Time and Fiona Bruce on Thursday night, where she was just desperately looking out at the audience all the time saying,
that's true.
Find me a Brexiteer who hates Brexit.
That is true. But nevertheless, you must have been as surprised as I was at how the Brexit argument got a round of applause there. Yeah. I wondered whether something had gone wrong with the BBC audience picker. I bet that person got fired afterwards.
Or maybe Brexit's just not as bad as the BBC like to think. Kelvin MacKenzie, but BBC spokesman, did tell us. We feature a wide range of guests and opinions across the series and ensure we meet our due impartiality commitments.